Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I joined the Marine Corps right after high school. I grew up in a military family, and I always knew I wanted to serve, but I wanted to do something different than being on the front lines. That's how I ended up in logistics. I loved solving puzzles and organizing things, so it seemed like a perfect fit. After completing my training, I was assigned to a unit in South Carolina as a Lance Corporal. My job was straightforward but important. I had to coordinate the shipment of our 7-ton trucks to Wisconsin to get them up-armored, basically adding extra protection. It was a year-long project, and while the actual loading and coordination weren't too complicated, the paperwork was a nightmare. But I was good at my job, and everything was running smoothly until he showed up. This new staff sergeant transferred to our motor pool, and from day one he was a complete nightmare. He seemed to have this chip on his shoulder about everything and everyone, especially those of lower rank like me. One morning I was organizing the paperwork for an upcoming shipment when he barged into my office. He demanded to know what I was doing with the forms. I explained that I was just preparing the documentation for next week's shipment, addressing him by his rank. Without even looking at the papers, he insisted I was doing it all wrong and demanded to see them. This became a daily occurrence. Even when I had to come in on weekends to coordinate shipments, he'd show up just to criticize my work. He would question my use of routing codes and ask who had taught me to do my job this way. When I tried to explain that I've been handling these shipments for months and these were the standard codes, he cut me off and accused me of talking back. He then declared that from that point on, he would need to review and sign everything before it went out. It wasn't like I had a choice in shipping these trucks. This was a direct order from Headquarters Marine Corps. But try explaining that to someone who just wanted to throw their weight around. After weeks of his constant interference, I finally reached my breaking point. We had a big shipment coming up, 4 trucks that needed to go to Wisconsin. That's when I had an idea. Since he was so keen on signing everything without actually reading it, I made a few adjustments to the paperwork. Instead of routing the trucks to Wisconsin, I changed the codes to send them to 29 Palms, California. As expected, he stormed in that morning. He asked about the shipping papers in his usual aggressive tone. I told him everything was prepared and ready for his signature. True to form, he barely looked at the forms while making his usual condescending remarks, commenting that I had at least managed to get something right for once. He signed the papers with a flourish, and off went the trucks, in the completely wrong direction. 2 weeks later, our command center was in an uproar. The trucks hadn't arrived in Wisconsin and no one knew where they were. When the investigation started, I simply told them that the staff sergeant had taken over all shipping responsibilities. They called him in. The commander's questioning was brutal. He asked the staff sergeant about the truck's destination, and the staff sergeant stumbled over his words, claiming he'd signed off on the standard route. When asked if he'd actually read the documentation, his face went from red to white, unable to answer. The situation got even better when our command received a call from 29 Palms, telling us they had 4 unclaimed trucks sitting in their yard. The commander was furious. Not only had the staff sergeant overstepped his bounds, but his incompetence had sent 4 massive military vehicles on a cross-country journey to the wrong destination. I fixed the whole situation in about an hour, doing exactly what I've been doing successfully before he showed up. Later that day, the commander pulled the staff sergeant into his office for a private conversation. While I couldn't hear everything, words like incompetence, waste of resources, and stay in your lane definitely made it through the door. After that, the staff sergeant never set foot in the logistics office again. He'd walk past with his head down, taking the long way around to avoid coming anywhere near my desk. The next few months were the most peaceful of my deployment. Every truck made it to Wisconsin exactly on schedule, and surprisingly everything worked perfectly when people who actually knew what they were doing were left to do their jobs. I'm a young mother of 2 living in a small suburb just outside the city. My husband and I had been saving up for months to buy our children some new clothes and toys. After carefully planning out the best sales and deals, we finally made our trip to the mall. I was excited to spend quality time with my children and watch their eyes light up at all the displays. However, the crowds and noise were getting to me that day. I had a lot on my mind, and I found myself standing in the middle of the walkway, trying to get my bearings, when Karen decided to make her presence known. She tapped me on the shoulder, and I could tell from her face that she wasn't happy. She rudely told me to move out of the way, claiming she had places to be and didn't have time to stand around. Her tone was incredibly rude, but I tried to stay calm. I apologized and explained that I was just trying to find my way to the food court and wasn't trying to hold anyone up. She responded with a nasty comment about how, if I paid more attention instead of daydreaming, I wouldn't be blocking everyone's way. I gave her a polite smile and started walking, wishing her a good day as I passed. But Karen wasn't done. She followed me, ranting about how I was blocking the way and daydreaming. She accused me of thinking I was better than everyone else just because I was standing in the middle of the walkway. She called me selfish and entitled, saying I didn't care about anyone but myself. I kept walking, trying to ignore her, but suddenly felt a hard shove to my chest. Karen had stepped in front of me, blocking my path. She demanded to know what I thought I was doing, yelling that I couldn't just walk away from her like that. What Karen didn't know was that I had an implanted cardiac device in my chest that keeps me alive by detecting and correcting dangerous heart rhythms. When she shoved me, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. She had damaged my device and I could feel my heart starting to race out of control. I tried to explain but could barely speak. I just stood there struggling to breathe. Karen kept demanding to know what was happening and why I was just standing there. Through labored breaths, I managed to tell her about my heart device and how she had damaged it, explaining that I needed to get to a hospital. Karen dismissed my explanation entirely, accusing me of making up excuses to get out of the situation. She refused to let me leave until I explained myself properly. I knew I needed help fast, so I started screaming for help, begging someone to call security and an ambulance. People around us started pulling out their phones, but Karen completely lost it. She started yelling that I was putting on an act and just trying to get attention, insisting that I wasn't really sick. She tried to grab me, but suddenly my husband appeared and pushed her away. He picked me up and started carrying me toward the security booth. I could hear Karen screaming behind us, threatening to destroy my husband for pushing her. She tried to chase after us, but several people grabbed her and held her back until security arrived. The guards detained her while paramedics rushed me to the hospital. The doctors confirmed my cardiac device was damaged and worked quickly to fix it. Later, I learned Karen had been arrested after the police reviewed the mall's security footage. She had fought with the officers too, forcing them to physically restrain her. A few weeks later, I found out Karen was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The judge wasn't happy that she had assaulted someone with a medical condition and destroyed a life-saving medical device. She also got charged with resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. I heard that Karen had to sell her house to pay for my medical bills and damages. Apparently, she threw an epic tantrum in court when the judge delivered the sentence, which only made things worse for her. She's spending her time in prison writing angry letters to the judge about how unfair everything is and how she is the real victim in all this. I've lived in this tiny Canadian town my whole life, the kind where everyone knows everyone else's business before they do. Recently, our local convenience store, run by this wonderful Asian couple, made headlines when they sold a $1 million winning lottery ticket. Since then, everyone's been flocking there instead of the grocery store to buy their tickets, hoping lightning might strike twice. I don't buy lottery tickets myself, being a broke soon-to-be college student and all, but I always tag along when my mom goes to buy hers. She is the best and usually treats me to snacks, so I'm milking that arrangement for all it's worth until I head off to college next year. So there we were on a regular lottery day after dinner. I could already taste the Pop-Tarts calling my name from town. When we got to the store, there was just one guy ahead of us at the counter. This dude had 3 boxes crammed full of lottery tickets to scan. You know the kind, where you hear that annoying winner jingle that plays forever just to tell you you've won another free play. While we waited, keeping our distance because of the virus and all, I busied myself catching Pokemon on my phone. There was a Venipede infestation in Pokemon Go around the store that needed handling. You're welcome, by the way. Finally, the guy finished scanning all his tickets. Turned out all those tickets only won him about $40. That's when things got ugly. The angry customer started yelling about how little money he'd won. The female owner tried to explain that winning wasn't guaranteed and suggested he could try again another time. This only made him angrier, and he started mocking her English skills, shouting that he'd spent his entire paycheck on the tickets. I couldn't help myself and told him that was his own problem. He immediately snapped at me to shut up. My mom didn't jump in to defend me. We have this understanding that we can handle ourselves. Plus, she was probably enjoying the show. The female owner then told him he needed to leave because of his yelling. Instead of leaving, he made a racist comment about her being Asian and supposedly good at math, suggesting that more tickets should equal more money. I couldn't resist commenting that he probably didn't do well in math class himself. My mom chimed in with a joke about me not being the worst mathematician in town anymore, adding that even my bad bet would probably win more money than he just did. That's when the male owner came out to handle the situation. The angry customer immediately started mocking him too, asking if his English was better. When the male owner asked what the problem was, the customer started speaking in an exaggerated, mocking accent, complaining that the female owner hadn't given him enough money. I told him to just go home and look for coins under his couch cushions to pay his bills, suggesting he should move on with his sad life. That's when things got intense. The guy got right up in my face, breathing heavily like he was about to throw hands. Now, I'm not exactly UFC material, more like a twig who runs every morning and browses Reddit. Even with my mom there for backup, this guy could have done some damage. But the male owner wasn't having any of it. The male owner threatened to call the police if the customer didn't leave. The guy finally started heading out, but not before making more racist comments and mocking the owner's accent by imitating how he'd say, "Call the police." Real classy stuff. After he left, we all had a good laugh about it. The owners even let me get a bonus box of Pop-Tarts for the price of one. When we got home, my mom scanned her lottery tickets online and won $20. We couldn't stop laughing about that. My brother and grandma probably thought we'd lost it. Word spreads fast in our town, and this kind of behavior doesn't fly here. The guy's getting the cold shoulder from pretty much everyone. We're usually pretty forgiving if someone apologizes, but being racist to our local store owners, that's not something people here take lightly. The store owners are doing better than ever, by the way. I was in a tight spot financially about 6 years ago. I had plans to join the military and was supposedly 4 months away from heading to boot camp. With my savings running low, I needed some quick cash to tide me over. Like any desperate job seeker, I turned to Craigslist. Despite my usual aversion to sales jobs, especially commission-based ones, I figured it would work as a temporary solution. After sending out a few applications, I got a call from a guy who claimed to be opening a new store. He seemed impressed with my resume and wanted me to come in for an interview. During the call, I was upfront about the commute being longer than I typically accept for a retail position. I asked about the pay, and he said they were offering hourly rates in the mid-teens plus commission. It sounded decent enough, so I agreed to show up that Friday at 8 a.m. The interview day arrived cold and rainy. I put on my best shirt and tie and battled through heavy traffic to reach the address. The strip mall was familiar to me, but I couldn't find any signage for the company. Instead, I spotted an empty space with 2 people inside. While waiting in my car, I watched a woman in business attire take down a retail space for rent sign from the window. Red flags were already popping up. When I walked in 5 minutes early, my suspicions went through the roof. The place was furnished with cheap plastic folding tables, the kind college students use for beer pong. The walls were covered in laminated charts showing dollar signs, stock photos of smiling people, and worst of all, a pyramid-shaped organizational chart. The woman who'd removed the sign greeted me warmly and welcomed me to the company, gesturing for me to take a seat. She settled behind her folding table desk and pretended to shuffle papers around. When I asked how long she'd been working for the manager, she claimed she'd been his secretary for about 6 months and assured me I would love working there. Then a man in his early 30s wearing an ill-fitting suit walked out. The woman enthusiastically announced my arrival, calling him Dennis. He immediately corrected her, reminding her rather coldly that his name was David. They'd apparently been over this before. His demeanor instantly changed as he turned to me with a fake smile, directing me to join a circle of chairs for what he called a group interview. As more people arrived, he launched into his pitch about an exciting opportunity with Cutco knives. He even brought out a textbook, strategically covering parts of the page while showing us the company name. Most people seemed impressed, especially a pregnant woman who was excited about the flexible hours. David went on about his success and how hard workers will rise to the top quickly. When David stepped out for a phone call, leaving his textbook behind, I seized the opportunity. I grabbed the book and found the marked page. It was actually a section about pyramid schemes, with Cutco listed as a prime example of predatory business practices. I shared this information with the group, explaining how pyramid schemes operate and suggesting they ask about startup costs. When David returned, one of the interviewees asked him what we needed to get started. David explained that we'd need to pay startup fees to get our first set of demonstration knives. The room erupted in chaos. People started yelling. The pregnant woman burst into tears, and his secretary suddenly backtracked, claiming she'd never met him before. When David realized I was behind the revolt, he angrily demanded that I leave. As everyone stormed out, I noticed the retail space for rent sign leaning against the wall. I called the number and spoke with the property manager, explaining what had just happened. She revealed they hadn't even officially leased the space yet. They were supposed to sign the paperwork later that day. A few weeks later, I received a rage-filled email from David. He'd lost his deposit on the space because he violated the holding agreement. He blamed me for ruining his life and threw in some choice words about my mother. I forwarded his email to the property manager, who shared it with their legal team. His written admission of what he'd tried to pull made their case airtight. Not only did he lose his deposit, but he ended up facing legal consequences for his attempted scam. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.